The morning air carried the scent of fresh coffee and open plains, but Karen's piercing screech sliced through it like a rusty blade. "Get her off this property now, officers. Remove her immediately. I sold this ranch to my cousin's son." Her voice rang across my land as 3 cop cars idled just beyond my gate, their lights casting an eerie glow. I stood barefoot on my porch, coffee mug steaming in my hands, staring in utter disbelief while Boomer, my loyal ranch dog, let out a low growl, ears twitching. The officers strode toward my yard, one with a hand hovering near his holster, ready for trouble if I so much as blink wrong. Karen, the HOA president from the neighboring development, trailed them in her neon green power suit, oversized sunglasses perched like a crown, her smirk practically shouting victory. "She's trespassing," Karen declared, jabbing a finger at me with theatrical flair. "I have the paperwork. I sold this place to my family last week. She's refusing to vacate. Arrest her for squatting." The lead officer, sporting a thick mustache and mirrored shades, raised his voice to cut through her dramatics. "Mum, step down from the porch. We need to talk." I didn't budge. "This is my land," I said, slow and steady. "My name's on the deed." "Nobody sold a damn thing." He glanced at Karen, then back at me. "Ma'am, she's got a signed document that says otherwise. We're here to de-escalate, but if you don't cooperate." I laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. "You're telling me you rolled out here with no real proof, just because Karen claims she sold my ranch?" Karen stormed forward, strutting like she owned the dirt under her feet. "That's President Karen to you. This ranch was a blight on our community." I took initiative, found a beer, and handled the transfer. I nearly choked on my coffee, hands trembling with the urge to fling the mug. "Which city in the United States are you watching from? Drop a comment and share with us if you've had any run-ins with an HOA. We'd love to narrate your story on our channel." "From shaking she's dangerous," Karen added, pointing at me like I was a wanted fugitive. "She lets wild animals roam. There's a bull that charged my poodle last week." Boomer barked loudly, stepping between me and the officers. As they neared, one officer placed a hand on his radio. "Ma'am, if you don't come with us peacefully." And just like that, everything shifted. A low rumble started in the distance. I glanced. Behind me, a dozen pickup trucks were pulling up behind the house, one by one. My ranch hands jumped out. My cousin Levi, who had arms the size of tree trunks, stepped forward first. "Is there a problem here, ma'am?" he said, glaring at the cops. Karen turned pale. What she didn't realize was I wasn't alone. Cliffhanger: what's going to happen when my ranch hands confront the cops? Will the officers back off or escalate? What's in the fake document? Karen brought. "Let's rewind. The truth is, I wasn't always a rancher. A year ago, I lived in the city working as a corporate manager. But after my uncle passed, I inherited this 60-acre ranch tucked just outside a quiet little town. I thought it would be peaceful, be even healing after the mess my life had been, but I hadn't counted on Karen. Karen lived in the HOA community, about half a mile down the dirt road. It was a gated subdivision full of matching houses, trimmed hedges, and people who thought they were royalty because they had 2-car garages and color-coded trash bins from the first time she saw me. She made it her mission to clean up the area. According to her, my ranch was an eyesore. My animals were univilized, my fences were too rustic, and my American flag on the porch was too aggressive. She started small at first. She'd leave typed up letters in my mailbox complaining about dust clouds from my pickup or my early morning rooster. Then came the petitions, yes, actual petitions, asking the county to ration my land so it would fall under HOA regulation. But it was the 3rd week after I moved in that she got bold. I was hauling hay bales when I noticed a strange SUV parked near my barn. Karen was inside with a notepad and a man in a suit beside her, who I later found out was a realtor. I walked up, sweaty and covered. "Excuse me, can I help you?" I asked. "Oh, don't mind us," she said with a fake smile. "We're just checking property lines without my permission." She gave a tight laugh. "Well, since the HOA looking to acquire this land, we figured it was okay." I told her to leave. The next week, I caught someone spray painting orange marks along my fencing. Then someone posted a for sale sign at the far edge of my property. Without my knowledge, I filed a complaint with the sheriff's department. They said they'd look into it, but didn't do much. Small towns can be tricky like that, especially when HOA folks donate heavily to local events. So started documenting everything, every letter, every phone call, every uninvited visitor. I even put up trail cams and motion detectors around the property. Then one morning my mailbox was knocked over. A few days later, my front gate was cut clean open still. I didn't stop living. I spent time training horses, teaching the local kids how to ride, donating produce for my farm stand, and even hosting open barbecues on weekends. The community outside the HOA loved me, but Karen, that only made her angrier. She once screamed at a 10-year-old who was picking peaches from my orchard, saying he was trespassing. When his mother showed him, Karen threatened to sue her for corrupting neighborhood standards. It wasn't long before her harassment escalated to legal threats, letters claiming my barn violated community ordinances, despite the fact I wasn't even under their jurisdiction. Had my lawyer respond, but Karen wasn't someone who respected boundaries. Then came that morning. Boomer had barked nonstop at the gate, which was odd. I walked out to find 3 squad cars and Karen pacing behind them like a general commanding an army. She had what looked like a deed in her hands, printed, highlighted, and stamped with a seal I'd never seen before. It looked legit, but I knew it had to be fake. My lawyer hadn't notified me of any sale, and I certainly hadn't signed anything. That's when she yelled, "I sold it to my cousin's son. The HOA approved it. She's got no say in it anymore." The fact that the police even considered her nonsense was terrifying, but as I stood there surrounded by hostility, sipping coffee and trying to keep calm, something inside me snapped. Enough was enough. I looked at the officers and said, "I hope y'all are ready for the biggest lawsuit your department's ever seen." And just as one of them stepped onto my porch, Levi's voice rang out like thunder from the trucks pulling in. "Ma'am," he repeated, "is there a problem?" Every head turned. Karen's jaw dropped. The officers froze. 12 ranch hands were now behind me, boots crunching the gravel, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Most of them were ex-military or lifelong ranchers, people who didn't scare easy. One of the younger deputies stepped back and whispered to the mustached officer. Boomer sat tongue out, tail wagging, like it was all a game, but the tension could be cut with a knife. And just when it felt like things couldn't get more heated, one of my ranch hands opened the tailgate of a truck and pulled something out. It was a massive folder, thick, worn, and sealed with the county's official seal. "Got the real deed right here," he said, "certified by the county clerk. This land's been in her family for over 60 years. He handed it to the officers, and then Karen lunged. She screamed and grabbed for the folder, but before she could snatch it, something shocking happened. She slipped on Boomer's water bowl and went flying face first into a pile of manure near the barn. Everyone gasped, and just like that, everything exploded into chaos. Karen lay sprawled in the dirt and manure pile, her once bright neon green suit now smeared in brown, her sunglasses lopsided and cracked. The silence that followed was broken only by the faint buzzing of a fly and Boomer's single bark, as if he approved. The officers didn't move at first. One of them blinked slowly, like he was trying to process what he just witnessed. The younger one let out a tiny snort before quickly covering his mouth. My ranch hands tried to stifle their laughter, but a few couldn't hold back. Karen, groaning, slowly pushed herself up. "This is assault. You train that animal to do this," she shouted, pointing wildly at Boomer. I folded my arms and looked her straight in the eye. "You tripped over a water bowl, Karen. Your heels aren't made for the countryside." The lead officer stepped forward and helped her up, though you could tell he wasn't thrilled about it. "Ma'am, we're going to need that document you mentioned earlier, the sale deed. We need to verify its authenticity before we can proceed any further." Karen was breathing heavy, nostrils flaring like a bull. She handed over the fake deed with shaking hands. The paper was a mess of highlighter, fake seals, and a name written in all caps with a spelling error. The officer read through it silently, his brows pulling tighter with each second. "This document doesn't have a legal parcel number," he finally said. "There's no county clerk signature, no notary stamp, and the beer's name is listed as Travis Carlson, HOA relative, with no ID attached." "I told you she forged it," I said calmly, "and I have the real deed in that folder." The officer turned to my ranch hand, still holding the official documents. "Mind if I take a look?" He handed them over without a word. The officer flipped through them slowly, These had all the proper seals, stamps, and even dated back decades. The ownership trail was clean and my name was therein. Bold, well, that clears things up, the officer said, handing the fake deed back to Karen. Looks like this is not only invalid, it's criminal. You could be looking at fraud charges. Karen's face turned red, then pale. I know. This is all a misunderstanding. I was just trying to help. She clearly doesn't know how to run this place. It's a mess, the weeds, the noise, the animals. This should have been part of the HOA years ago. I stepped down from the porch and stood eye to eye with her. You can't just decide to take something that doesn't belong to you, Karen. This isn't your gated playground. This is my home. I was going to bring order to this place, she snapped. I was trying to improve property values by stealing my ranch, by making it better for everyone. A small crowd had started to gather by the gate, neighbors from the nearby farms, and even a few from the edge of the HOA. I spotted Mrs. Jenkins, who ran the local flower shop, and old man Parker, who sold peaches at the corner stand. They were whispering and pointing at Karen. You said this ranch was yours now? Parker asked, stepping forward. That you sold it, Karen flinched. I thought the papers went through. You've been running your mouth all over town about how you were going to bulldoze the barn and put in a tennis court, Mrs. Jenkins added. That set everyone off. What about our kids' writing lessons? Someone asked. She promised she'd open a private resort here. Who gave her that idea? Karen looked like a cornered cat. You all don't understand. I was trying to help. This place drags down the neighborhood. The crowd didn't seem to agree. I raised my voice just a little. For those who don't know, my uncle raised horses here for 40 years. He donated food during every harvest season. He let neighborhood kids camp out under the stars. This ranch, it just land. Its legacy. Everyone was quiet for a moment. Karen turned toward the cops again, desperate. You have to remove her. She's dangerous. This whole ranch is a violation of community code. She's not part of your HOA. The mustached officer said flatly, and even if she were, that wouldn't give you the right to falsify documents or call in a trespassing claim. Karen's voice cracked. But she doesn't belong here. Boomer growled again. The officer looked her square in the face. Ma'am, unless you want to be cited for filing a false police report, I suggest you leave now. Karen stared at him like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. You're taking her side. No, he said, I'm taking the side of the law. There was a tense moment as Karen stood there trembling, her once pristine suit still covered in filth, her ego in tatters. I'm not done, she hissed. This isn't over. She turned on her heels and stormed back toward her shiny white SUV, flinging the driver door open so hard it bounced back and hit her. She shoved it again harder, jumped in, and floored it so fast she kicked up a dust cloud behind her. The cop stood for a moment longer, then handed back the deed to my ranch hand. Sorry about all this, one said. She made it sound like an emergency. I just nodded. Thanks for sorting it out. As they left, the neighbors approached me one by one. A few patted me on the shoulder, others shook their heads and apologized for ever believing Karen's gossip. But just as I thought the storm had passed, a message alert buzzed on my phone. It was from the county office. A new zoning request had been filed for my ranch by Karen, and attached to it was a signed petition from 14 HOA members. I stared at the screen. This wasn't over, not even close. The next morning I drove straight to the county clerk's office with a copy of the text and the attached petition still open on my phone. I wasn't about to wait around and let Karen pull more tricks. The woman had just filed a zoning request claiming my ranch should be reclassified as shared recreational space for neighborhood expansion. The audacity of it almost made me laugh. Almost. The county clerk, Miss Denise, sat behind the front desk in her usual pink cardigan and cat-eye glasses. She looked up and smiled when I entered. Well, if it isn't the ranch lady who's got the whole town talking, she said. I was just about to call you. Let me guess, I said, holding up my phone. You got the zoning request too? Denise nodded. Came in yesterday evening right before closing. I flagged it. It's creative, I'll give her that. But it's not legal. Can she really get this passed? I asked. 14 HOA members signed it. She can try, Denise replied, pulling the file from a drawer. But your property is not within HOA jurisdiction. Always has been zoned for agricultural use with independent ownership. This petition holds no weight unless you give consent. I don't. I figured, she said with a wink. But they've also requested a formal review, which means the zoning board has to meet And consider it, the hearing's been scheduled for 2 weeks from now. Great 2 weeks of Karen running around town spinning stories and acting like she's about to turn my ranch into a clubhouse with a pickleball court and smoothie bar. I left the office with a headache and a folder full of paperwork. When I got home, I gathered my ranch hands in the barn and told them what happened. Levi whistled. She really doesn't know when to quit. She's dangerous, I said. If she wins this zoning request, I'll have HOA rules shoved down my throat. They'll dictate everything from the type of fencing I use to how many chickens I can keep. We could start getting more support, suggested Maria, one of my toughest and most loyal ranch hands. Let the community know what she's trying to do, make it public. So that's exactly what we did. The next day, I drove to town and printed flyers titled "Save the Ranch, Say No to HOA Takeover." I passed them out at the diner, the feed store, the library, and even the elementary school. I spoke with parents, farmers, old folks, and business owners, anyone who'd listen. To my surprise, most people were on my side. She's lost it, said a mechanic from the gas station. Heard she told people you kept alligators in your pond. She came to my shop asking if I'd sponsor a tennis court fundraiser, said Mrs. Jenkins from the flower shop. Claimed it was part of the ranch revitalization project. I thought she was joking. She told my wife she was going to build a dog park where your barn is, said old man Parker. It was absurd, but also terrifying. Karen had been planting seeds for weeks, maybe months. By the weekend, we held a town meeting at the community hall. I stood at the front of the room, a microphone in one hand, boomer at my feet, and a photo slideshow behind me showing the ranch's history, Uncle, the horses, the kids riding lessons, the community BBQs. The crowd was packed. Not a single HOA board member showed up. Of course, I ended my talk with a simple sentence: this isn't just a ranch, it's a part of this town, and I'm not letting anyone steal it. The room erupted in applause. I felt stronger than I had in weeks. Maybe, just maybe, we could stop Karen. But then that very night, something happened. At 13 a.m., Boomer started barking like mad. I threw on my boots, grabbed my flashlight, and ran outside. The barn doors were open, wide open, and inside the stalls were empty, all the horses gone. I froze, heart pounding. Then I saw it spray painted on the side of the barn in dripping red letters: "You don't belong here." My legs felt like stone, my hands clenched into fists. Someone had stolen my horses. This wasn't just harassment anymore, this was war. I stood frozen in front of the barn, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The red spray paint looked fresh, dripping down the wood like blood. The words burned into my chest. "You don't belong here." Boomer barked again and ran in frantic circles, sniffing the dirt. He darted toward the back fence, where the hoof prints were fresh, leading out to the service road that ran behind the ranch. My horses were gone, all 6 of them. To Mayor's 3 Gillings and my uncle's prize stallion Ranger vanished into the night. My mouth went dry. I grabbed my phone and called Levi. "Yeah," he answered, groggy. "They took the horses." I said, "Silence, I'll be there in 5. He said the line went dead by 2:30 a.m. and my entire crew was on the scene, flashlights sweeping the pastures, boots crunching through dirt, eyes wide with disbelief. Levi walked up to the side of the barn and squatted by the fence line. "Tire tracks," he muttered. "Big ones, dual rear wheels. Someone used a stock trailer." Maria ran back with a broken halter in her hand. "They cut through the side gate. Used bolt cutters." I stood in the middle of it all, still in my flannel nightshirt and boots, fists clenched. "They took Ranger," I said, barely able to say it aloud. Levi looked up. "You think it was Karen?" I didn't even hesitate. "Absolutely. But why steal horses?" Maria asked. "She's crazy. But this is next level. To rattle me," I said, my voice low, "to scare me into giving up the land, and maybe to make it look like I can't take care of the place." It was all coming together. Now, if I looked like a negligent rancher, she could use it in the zoning hearing. "Let's call the sheriff," Levi said. I shook my head. "We need proof it was her. If we call now, she'd just deny it, and without evidence, they won't lift a finger." But I had an idea. I'd installed trail cameras last month. Avren had her open house with that realtor. Hadn't checked the SD cards in a while, but I prayed they caught something. I ran back inside, grabbed the trail cam monitor from the drawer, and rushed to the oak tree that had the best angle on the back fence. I popped the SD card into the reader and scrolled through the footage. At 1:47 a.m. movement, a large black truck pulling a trailer. I fast-forwarded. At 1:49 a.m. the barn doors opened. A man stepped out, first bald head, thin build, maybe mid-40s, then a second person, followed. Even in the grainy night vision I recognized the outline of her ridiculous high ponytail and bright blazer. It was Karen. She was there. I turned the screen toward Levi. Got her. He exhaled. You going to go to the sheriff now? I nodded slowly. Yeah. But I'm not stopping there. I copied the footage to a USB drive, and we loaded up the truck. While Levi drove, I called the sheriff's emergency line. I kept it short and calm. I had video evidence of theft and trespassing. We were on our way. Sheriff Hart met us at the office. He was a stocky, no-nonsense man with gray stubble and heavy boots. I'd only met him once before, but he'd seemed fair. You sure it's her? He asked after watching the footage. I'd bet my entire ranch on it. Well, he said, rubbing his jaw, that footage is good, but we'll need more if we're going to issue a warrant. Location of the horses, recovery, witness statements, all of it. What if she moves them before morning? Levi asked. She might, the sheriff admitted, but if she crossed county lines, she's in deep trouble. That's livestock theft, felony charges, and if she altered any ownership records, it could be federal. I leaned across the desk. She's desperate. Sheriff should do something stupid again. He nodded. Let me make some calls. By the time we got back to the ranch, the sun was rising, and my phone was lighting up. Word had spread fast. Photos of the graffiti had gone viral in the local Facebook groups. People were shocked and angry. My neighbor Parker brought over breakfast biscuits and hot coffee. Just say the word and I'll rally everyone. That lady's gone too far. The outpouring of support was overwhelming. Even some HOA members began quietly messaging me, people who had supported Karen in the past but were now distancing themselves. She told us you were moving. One message Reed said you were selling the ranch and had already started clearing it. I feel so dumb now. Another said we didn't know she was going this far. She told us you had abandoned the horses. I screenshotted everything. By noon, Sheriff Hart called back. We found the horses. He said all of them in a private stable just over the county line. The owner said he was paid cash to keep them for a few days by a woman who matched Karen's description. Is he willing to testify? I asked. He already gave a statement. I collapsed onto the porch bench. Ice burning. Boomer rested his head on my knee. They're safe, I whispered. We got them back. But just as I started to feel like I could breathe again, my phone buzzed again. It was a voicemail from a blocked number. I played it on speaker. You may think you've won this round, Karen's voice hissed, but you don't know who you're messing with. My husband is on the HOA zoning board now, and we've already filed a complaint with the State Agricultural Commission. You'll be out by the end of the month. The call ended with a beep. My blood ran cold. Karen wasn't giving up. She was doubling down, and she just brought her husband into the fight. I replayed Karen's voicemail 3 times, each time with a deep rage growing in my chest. You'll be out by the end of the month. Her voice oozed smugness, like she believed she had me cornered. Her husband, Charles Lindholm, wasn't just on the zoning board. He was the newest vice chairman, appointed just 2 weeks prior during a quiet reshuffle no one in town paid much attention to, but now it made sense. Karen had been playing a long game, setting up every piece of this scheme months in advance. She's not just trying to take your land anymore, Levi said, his brow furrowed. She's trying to destroy your whole life. I stood in the middle of the pasture where my horses had just been returned that morning, safe. A nervous ranger nuzzled my palm like he could sense my stress. I whispered to him, we're not losing this land, not now, not ever. That afternoon I met with Sheriff Hart again. He confirmed that an arrest warrant for Karen had been submitted, but things were moving slower than usual. She's stalling. He told me lawyers are involved now. She's claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that the horses were rescued after hearing reports of neglect. I nearly laughed. She spray-painted a hate message on my barn. She's twisting the narrative. Already submitted photos to the egg board showing broken gates and old feed bins. She even cropped out the date stamps. I have proof, I said, placing a folder thick with screenshots, time-stamped photos, and camera footage on his desk. Trail cam footage. Vet records my neighbor's statements. All of it. Hart flipped through the folder. It's solid, but this is turning political. You'll need to be ready for that hearing. I was by the next morning. Flyers went up all over town. Community rally to save the ranch was the headline, with a giant photo of Ranger in the background and a line below that said, come stand for truth and landowners' rights. The rally was set for Saturday, 3 days before the zoning hearing, and people showed up, dozens. Then hundreds old farmers, young families, even students from the nearby college came out. Local food trucks parked by the fence, a bluegrass band set up near the barn. It looked more like a fair than a protest. I took the mic standing on a hay bale platform. Karen Lindholm wants to take my land. I told them she wants to turn it into a country club for her HOA friends. She lied, she forged, she even stole my animals. But this isn't just about me, this is about all of us, about what happens when a handful of people think they can bully the rest into silence. The crowd cheered so loudly, echoed across the hills. Karen showed up halfway through wearing a black pants suit, oversized pearls, and holding a clipboard. Charles walked behind her, tall and stiff as a board. They didn't speak to anyone, just stood at the fence scowling and taking notes. Every once in a while, Karen pointed towards something and whispered to Charles. I locked eyes with her once. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the smile of someone who believed they'd already won. 2 nights later, the zoning board meeting took place at the county administration building. The hearing room was packed, standing room. Only Karen sat in the front row, arms folded, her hair perfectly curled. Charles sat beside her, flipping through a binder. My name was called first. I stood before the panel and delivered my statement. I showed them the original deed. I played the trail cam footage. I passed around a stack of letters from neighbors, business owners, local teachers, even children who've learned to ride at my ranch. Karen Lindholm has no legal claim to my land. I finished. She didn't buy it. I never agreed to anything. She's forged, trespassed, and lied. Charles rose next. He cleared his throat and began what he probably thought was a brilliant legal take. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't question Miss Campbell's passion, he said, addressing the board, but passion does not equal stewardship. There have been multiple complaints about safety issues, noise disturbances, and unsightly structures on the land. As representatives of the community, the HOA simply wants to bring this property up to standard. You mean steal it? Someone muttered behind me. A few people snickered. Charles went on, we believe rationing this area for recreational development would benefit the entire neighborhood. That's when Sheriff Hart stood up from the back of the room. Before you go further, he said, walking forward slowly, have a sworn statement and verified evidence that Mr. Lindholm's wife entered Miss Campbell's property without permission, removed livestock, and falsified a property sale. He laid a sealed folder on the panel's desk. Charges have been filed. This is an active investigation. You could have heard a pin drop. Charles turned beet red. Karen gasped, then stood up, grabbed her purse, and stormed out of the room. The board called a short recess. 20 minutes later, the chairman returned the petition to Roshoni. Miss Campbell's property is denied. He announced this matter is closed. Cheers erupted through the room. People clapped, shouted, and hugged. I stood frozen for a moment, blinking back tears. I had one outside the building. The air felt lighter. Boomer trotted beside me, wagging his tail proudly like he understood the victory. But just as I reached my truck, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from an unknown number. You may have won in court, but I don't need the law to finish what I started. Watch your back. I stared at the screen. Karen wasn't done. She was going rogue. I gripped the steering wheel tight, the glow of that last message still lighting up my phone screen. You may have won in court, but I don't need the law to finish what I started. Watch your back. It felt like ice had poured down my spine. Boomer let out a low growl from the passenger seat, sensing the shift in my mood. Karen had just lost publicly, legally, and utterly. But people like her don't walk away quietly. I knew something was coming. I just didn't know what. The next few days were tense. Every sound outside made me check the windows. Every car that passed by I noticed, but strangely nothing happened. It was quiet, like the calm before a storm. Then on Friday evening I got a call from Maria. You might want to come down to the south fence, she said. Now I hopped in my truck and drove the short distance. I pulled up. I saw it immediately. My southern boundary line had been flattened, not knocked over, not cut, completely leveled. Fence posts torn from the ground, wire rolled up like someone was preparing for a construction site. But that wasn't the worst part. Just on the other side, a giant sign stood onto metal stakes in fresh concrete. Future site of HOA recreational lake, private access only. I stepped out of my truck so fast I nearly forgot to shut the door. What is this? I shouted, looking around. No workers, no equipment, just that giant sign mocking me like a giant middle finger from Karen herself. Maria handed me a folded paper. This was taped to the back. It was a phony land expansion notice signed by none other than Charles Lindholm, still listed as vice chairman of the HOA. The document claimed unused adjacent property would be repurposed for community recreational use, pending silent approval. Silent approval, I muttered. What does that even mean? Maria frowned. It means they're trying to pretend your land is just not yours. That's when I knew this wasn't about zoning anymore. Karen and Charles were running a new scam. They couldn't take my whole ranch, but now they were trying to eat away at it piece by piece, starting with the fence line. We tore the sign down on the spot and gathered every last broken fence post. I didn't just call the sheriff this time, I called a lawyer, not my old one, a big one, a federal property rights specialist based in Austin, who handled lawsuits against HOAs. His name was Curtis Fieldman. He wore boots with his tailored suits and talked like he chewed nails for breakfast. I sent him every document I had, and by Monday morning, he was on my porch. You've got a textbook case of coordinated land harassment, he said. We're not just talking civil charges, you've got grounds for criminal conspiracy. He handed me a folder. Inside were letters drafted to the State Agricultural Commission, the county clerk's office, the Texas Real Estate Commission, and the FBI's local field office. You give me the green light, Curtis said, and we bring the full hammer down. I gave him the green light. Within 48 hours, Charles Lindholm was served at his home during a neighborhood meeting. The look on his face, according to witnesses, was pure panic, and Karen, she was caught on camera by her own security system, screaming at the process server and hurling a potted plant at his car as he drove away. The footage went viral in our county. Suddenly Karen's little kingdom began to crumble. People she once charmed and threatened began turning on her home. Members called emergency meetings. Anonymous letters from residents began appearing online. One claimed she used HOA funds to hire private security patrols to stalk my ranch. Another said she faked signatures on the rationing petition. The walls were closing in, but Karen still had one last play. 1 week later, I received a knock at my door. Boomer barked once, then stopped, strangely calm. I opened it, and there she stood, Karen alone, hair a mess, no pearls, no sunglasses, just a wrinkled sweater, smeared lipstick, and eyes like fire. I came to talk, she said. I didn't. Step aside. You have 5 seconds before I call the sheriff, I said. She laughed bitterly. You think you've won? You think that ranch is your legacy? You're nobody. This land should have been mine. You don't deserve it. I earned it, I said quietly. And you just destroy. She stepped closer, and Boomer growled again. She stopped. You know what? She hissed. Enjoy your stupid dirt. I'm moving, selling everything, but you'll always know I almost took it from you. That'll haunt you forever. I looked her dead in the eyes. No, Karen, what'll haunt you is knowing that everyone saw you lose. And with that I shut the door in her face. Weeks passed. Karen and Charles quietly resigned from the HOA. Rumors swirled about a federal investigation, but I never got the full details. All I know is they left town fast. The ranch, it's still mine. The horses are healthy. The community still comes out for cookouts. We rebuilt the fence stronger than ever, and I planted wildflowers all along the south border where her fake sign once stood. Boomer still watches the gate. He doesn't bark much now. Peace returned, but I never forget how far she went and how close I came to losing it all. Let this be a lesson to every Karen who thinks power and lies can steal a legacy. Not on my ranch, not ever. Thanks for listening to this wild HOA story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to drop a comment below, and subscribe to the channel for more jaw-dropping tales. And if you've ever had a crazy Karen experience, we'd love to hear about it in the comments. Stay tuned, more insane HOA stories coming your way real soon.